small till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't. I'm building up a wall till it breaks. She hated when I call and it's late. I don't wanna keep you waiting. I hope I never keep you waiting. She think I know it all, but I don't.
Welcome to the Mixtape with Scott. I'm the host, Scott Cunningham. I'm a professor of economics at Baylor University in the central part of Texas. And this is my podcast. The podcast is about the personal stories of living economists, and it has a special place in its heart for the history of the credibility revolution as it traces through Princeton University and Harvard, Cambridge area. And our guest today is someone that fits right into that story. It's Diane Whitmore Schanzenbach, and I think I probably said it wrong. She is the Margaret Walker Alexander Professor of Human Development and Social Policy at Northwestern University in the Institute for Policy Research. Diane did her PhD at Princeton University, and she was actually one of Alan Krueger's students. And this season, I've been intentionally reaching out more and more to Dr. Krueger's students because he's no longer alive, and I am really just wanting to build out a little bit better an understanding of his mentoring, as well as to understand the students that he had a little bit. Diane is an economist that's definitely dyed in the wool labor economist in that Princeton tradition, highly rigorous, empirical, cares a lot about traditional labor questions, cares a lot about credibility, and cares a lot about communicating that information outside of the clan, the clan of economists. And you can see that in her trajectory as she shares, as she spent time at the Council of Economic Advisors right after college. She ended up being the director of the Hamilton Project at the Brookings Institution for 2 years and has spent her career at policy schools. She is published in top journals, tons of journals, made a lot of major contributions to areas in food insecurity as it relates to public policy like SNAP and other means tested programs. So I want to just go ahead and turn it over to her, to our conversation now, so that I don't take up any more of your time. But I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And as I always say, all of the podcasts are great opportunities to share this with loved ones, share it with students, share it with people that you think are really unaware of the kinds of people that are economists. Maybe they don't know what economics is, but lots of times it's people learn what economics is from economists and from their personal story, as opposed to just sending them a book about economics. And Diane is a wonderful person and a brilliant person. And I think this will be a great opportunity to share. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm going to turn it over to an earlier version of myself from a couple of hours ago and Dr. Diane Schanzenbach. Okay, well, this is really cool because I think we've only talked like one time, maybe one or two times. Is that right?
I don't know, maybe more than that, but
Maybe more than that? Okay, not very much. For the sake of the listener, will you tell us your full name, your long title with all the words in it, and who pays your paycheck?
hi, I'm Diane Whitmore Schanzenbach. I'm the Margaret Walker Alexander Professor in the School of Education and Social Policy and a faculty fellow at the Institute for Policy Research at Northwestern University. That barely even fits on a business card.
Have you met that how old is that Margaret Walker Anderson person or whatever?
She is deceased. She wrote a classic book called Jubilee about her grandmother experiencing emancipation of slavery
Oh,
as a slave. It is a beautiful book. I read it every year since
oh,
I became this. I received this chair. I'm very honored to wear her name, and I highly recommend it to everyone. And whenever it ends, the book ends, I mourn because I miss the characters. So
so it's
highly
a
recommend
novel.
Jubilee. That's right.
Oh, okay. Huh.
She's
Okay.
also a poet and a graduate of Northwestern from I think the 1920s.
Okay. All right. I'll check this person out. All right. Well, okay. Well, let's get started. So let's do an icebreaker. Tell me about a vacation that you've gone on. It could be a long time ago, or it could be recent. It could be a really great one. It could be a bad one. It could be a normal one. But for some reason, you still, every now and then, now think about it.
So our family has this goal for each of us to get to all 50 states. And it
Oh,
was inaugurated by my middle son, who was in Montessori school and was just as a 4-year-old was obsessed with maths. And I'll say that he heard that I was going to the Institute for Research on Poverty's annual meeting when he was
mm.
4. And he said, Madison, Wisconsin, can I come too? And so that sort of started this journey where we all trying to get to all 50 states. And our middle son Daniel had this goal that he wanted to get it done by his golden birthday when he turned 13. So uh, one of my favorite vacations was a road trip that we did where we needed to pick up Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
we
Like a
started off.
scavenger hunt.
It is like a scavenger hunt. What I'll say is every state in this great United States has interesting things to see, fun things to do. You just have to dig a little bit. And,
Yeah.
people would say, oh, we're going to Bali this summer. What about you? And like, we're going to Kansas and
Kansas. But you do it by
Oklahoma.
car.
And,
You
oh,
did it by
not all the
car?
time, but this one,
Mm,
yeah, we did. We stopped in Hannibal, Missouri, and then sort of went on down and around. I'll tell
yeah.
you, Arkansas is gorgeous. Who
Mm,
knew?
yeah, right,
And
right. A
and
lot
so
of the
now
South is
that
pretty.
Daniel and I have both been to all 50 states, some of the other slacker members of our family haven't quite been to them all, but um, I miss those days when we were trying to think, how do we get to Mississippi, your home state?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
Oh, that
boy, we
sounds
had a
fun.
blast. Yeah,
That's fun. I like projects like that. Those help
yeah.
motivate everybody, kind of like, or to me, to cross stuff off. We just got me and my son, my adult son, just drove over Christmas, from Christmas, the day after Christmas until last week. We drove for 2 weeks from Waco, Texas to Lake Tahoe, doing
Oh,
tent camping.
nice.
And I had never I really did not know Death Valley was pretty. I didn't know it was stunning. I always just thought it was really hot. I didn't realize it was like a science fiction movie of like the most amazing mountainous areas. It was so pretty. So much of the United States is really pretty.
Is gorgeous. And,
Yeah.
we sort of forget that. You think,
Yeah.
who wants to go to North Dakota? But it turns out it's beautiful too.
I know. I know. I always want to tell my friends in Europe, because when they come to the United States, I always think, well, they're probably going to go to the big cities, and they don't
Yeah.
know how pretty it can be with a car too. Car trips are really nice. Did you do
Yeah.
car trips with your family when you were young?
Not too much.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I was the youngest by a good amount. And so I
Oh,
think by the time that I came along, uh, everybody was, just, it was too hard to get like all the different ages of kids in the
yeah.
same.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in outside of St. Louis, Missouri.
Mm.
Florissant is the name of my hometown. We share a school district with Ferguson, which of course now everybody's heard of Ferguson, Missouri.
Oh, right.
And I'll tell you, Scott, they desegregated the schools when I was in third grade,
Mm.
and it was a great place to grow up, I think. But I got to observe a lot about race relations, about poverty, and inequality, and investments in kids. That, as we'll talk about, right, has sort of served me well over my whole career. But
How
I would
big is
say
that? How
that
big
town,
was that? Yeah.
um, Well, it's the sixth largest city in Missouri.
Wait, what
So,
did you say? Did you say? Oh, wait, it's sixth largest in Missouri. Wait, what?
yeah,
Remind me. Did you say it was Ferguson or it was not?
we share a school district with them. Mine is
Oh,
called Florissant,
got it.
technically, but they're sort of right next to each other. Um,
Oh, oh. Did you notice it getting integrated as a third grader?
oh yeah, 100%.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a big shift, and busing started, and they closed some schools and consolidated others. No, it was a big event in my childhood,
mm.
but of course I was 8, and so I didn't really understand why I was having to change schools and what was happening.
Oh, you
And
were
then
changing schools.
exactly,
Oh,
exactly.
I see. Wow. So what did your parents do? So what did your parents do for a living?
Yeah, so I come from a line of nerdy math girls. My grandmother was widowed early, and she became a math teacher back before, moms did stuff like
Yeah.
that. My mom, too, started out her career as a math teacher. She pivoted to become um, an accountant, which is frankly not much different over time. And so it seems like sort of the next generation for, someone who was uh, grew up with this ethos of we want to serve other people and we really like math. I just
Mm.
think,
Oh, they
being a
always
labor
came
public,
together.
yeah, exactly.
You always had these socially oriented, mathematically kind of people in your family?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Huh.
so. And then for me, taking Econ 101 and seeing, oh my gosh, you can use math to help people.
Yeah.
This is for me. And so I
Mm.
very, I know you like to sort of, talk about that early life a little bit. So I don't want to jump on it, but, um, I got to Wellesley College. Everybody said everybody should take a class with Chip Case. Chip was quite a personality. He was did the Case-Shiller Index, and
Oh,
um, I took his Econ 101 class and never looked back. I just
wow.
fell in love with economics within like 2 weeks of the start of the semester.
Oh, that's cool. Well, as a little kid, I can't wait to get into that. So, as a little kid, what kind of games did you like to play? Like, well, what were you doing? What was your favorite stuff to do when you were little?
So I was growing up. I was all in on music. I played the
Mm.
violin. I played the trumpet. I was the drum major of the marching band. I discovered the Beatles when I was in third grade, and that's been a lifelong love affair for me. And um, yeah, so I was a music kid, and I even played
Oh,
the violin through college. Um,
violin.
yeah,
Your parents, is it in their blood also?
not particularly.
Huh.
Um, yeah, but I just I saw the violin being played and I was like, I want to do that too. And it
Did it
just
come
became,
naturally?
I don't know if it came supernaturally, but I was really motivated and had some great teachers and mentors and a great, set of, community in that. And, there are these studies that suggest that like math and music are the same part of your brain. And so
Is that
that's
right?
sort of what I think makes the most sense to me is that it's just
Math
like,
creation of music.
yeah, I think that's right.
Wow, really? I didn't know that.
I think that's right.
Huh.
One of our listeners, right, could fact check it, but
Yeah, right. Right. Well, that's cool. So, like, if I had looked for you on a random weekend when you were little, it might have been playing the violin. You were not just practicing with your teacher, you were practicing outside of that little class
oh yeah, I was in all
all
the
the
community
time.
orchestras and yeah, all that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Was it that you just loved the music, or was it that you also wanted to master something?
Yeah, I don't know. But probably a little bit of both. But I love listening to music and I love making music, although I don't really do it
Uh,
anymore.
Huh.
But now I make my kids do it. So,
Right. Right. Well, so what did you want to be when you grew up before high
you know,
school? Before high
um,
school.
I didn't really know. I sort of assumed I'd be a teacher like my mom and my grandma.
Hmm.
And, by high school, I didn't think that that was the right path for me, but I just knew I wanted to do something that helped folks. And, really went into college undecided, interested in kind of social sciences broadly. and just
Mm,
didn't know what economics was until then I suddenly did. And my gosh, how beautiful it is.
yeah, at Wellesley. So
Yeah.
as a kid, if you wanted to be anything, you didn't really know, but you just knew you loved making music,
Yep. And
right?
doing math. Yeah.
And doing mathematics as a little kid. Oh, well, so how big was this high school?
It our graduating class was like 400, so 1600,
Hmm.
something like that.
But your grade school, what was it like?
Oh, gosh, um, it was great. But I don't, nothing particularly stands out. Actually, one thing would stand out is that everybody loves their elementary school teachers, but I had a really extraordinary one in third and fourth grade. They did this team teaching, and um, that was right after the schools integrated. And she was an African American woman. She ended up being the mayor of one of the small towns around there. And I, think about teachers that have changed my life. And I really
Mm,
think of Mrs. Viola J. Murphy as someone who, she cared about her students. She met them where they were, and of course, we can sort of fast forward and think about the paper I've got with Chetty about the lifetime impacts of teachers. And I think one reason that that resonated with so many people is because we can all look back and think about those teachers that really changed,
yeah.
inflection points of our life. And I was really fortunate to have one of those in
Mm,
Mrs. Murphy in third grade. But
mm,
eventually I decided, no, I didn't want to be a teacher myself. Although I guess, we are teachers. It's
right,
just different
right.
types of teachers.
Yeah, sure, sure. But so you go to high school and is it a relatively large high school compared to, because I guess all high schools feel large because you got all four grades together. So I guess actually I'm just thinking out loud, so it's like you're not going to you don't feel like you're going to a school of 400 people. You go into a school with almost 2,000 people, and that's not how eighth grade felt. But was it like a bunch of middle schools that fed into that ninth grade?
Um, I think so. I think there were a couple, and like, we were certainly in the largest sports league, right? So that suggests
Mhm.
we must have been a large high school.
Well, so was it easy for you to make friends? Were you
Oh,
someone that's easy to make friends?
I've got a great set of friends from, elementary school, middle school, high school. Still,
Yeah.
um, yeah, one of my best friends. We've been the best of friends since we were 12. Yeah, but whenever you get together, whether it's a sports team or a music group, there's sort of natural camaraderie, and yeah, I feel really fortunate that I've been able to, that I've had such great friendships. It turns out one of my friends became a PhD sociologist. One of my friends from middle school and high school, and she and I have written a couple of papers together.
Oh,
Uh,
wow, no way.
exactly. It's kind of
Wow.
um,
So did you sort socially into the band and like that was part of it? Like were you in the band in high school?
I was in the band. Uh, yeah, or I would think of will surprise no one. I think I was like with the nerds, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so my
So you
friends
were
were the
like,
other kids in calculus class.
yeah. So that's how I was wondering. It's like your close friends were a lot of the very intelligent kids. I didn't know about the music, but you were also with a lot of the kids that are doing music, and
Yeah,
that was your core group of buddies.
that's right. That's right.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what did you like doing outside of class? Was it still a lot of music?
Yeah. I mean,
Oh.
it was. Um, and
Because I would think, honestly, I would think if a kid is playing extremely seriously, has this math aptitude that you say is correlated with this musical aptitude, they're playing super, super focused, self-driven as a little kid, and it never stops. By the time you're in high school, you were probably really good.
that was pretty good.
Yeah.
The All State and the Youth Symphony and things like that.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
Well, did you
and it's
think
a shame.
about
I put so many hours into it, and I almost never pick it up now.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I guess that's life.
I'm sure it's a lot of investment in all that non-cognitive human capital too, though.
Yeah, I think I
Conscientiousness,
got stuff out of it. That's
I
right.
bet you
That's right.
did. I bet you
Yeah.
did. Did you think that you wanted to be a musician?
No, never. No, I was never that good.
Oh,
And um,
you could
right.
tell.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Somebody that I went to high school with, she is a professional musician today,
Mm.
and she was just head and shoulders above everybody
You could
else.
tell. So you could tell there was a gap.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh.
And she's on shows like American Idol and like in these,
Mm.
it's really fun to watch her career and how that's developed. But
So you're not
I'm really,
thinking of a you're just enjoying it.
yeah,
You know, like at
that's
that
right.
time, I'm doing what I love. I love math and I love my friends and I love music and I'm just doing what I love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm. Well, so what did
And
you,
then
but
really Wellesley is what did so much for me, and so I'd love for us to think about that time. It's a women's college, small liberal arts college,
mm.
and sort of went in not it was sort of kind of a happy accident that I ended up there,
Yeah, I
but
was going
my
to ask,
gosh,
did you know, was
nope.
that one of your favorite preferred places when you were thinking about school?
I had not set foot on the campus. I applied on a lark, when somebody else mentioned it. I thought, oh, well, I'll add this also. And uh, it could not have been more perfect for me.
Mm.
But I will, be lying if I said, oh, and I knew that from an early age. I stumbled into it, and my gosh, how fortunate I was
How far
that
away is
I
that
knew.
from home? How far did you have to
Well, it's
go?
in Boston, Massachusetts. So
Oh,
it's a pretty long plane flight.
is it in the city or is it like
No,
outside the
it's
city?
like the halfway point on the Boston Marathon. So it's
Oh,
13 miles outside of Boston.
so is it small too? It's relatively incoming class was what?
Um, Maybe not that much larger than my high school, maybe 500, 600, something like that.
Huh.
I should know
What
the answer to that.
what sold you on it? You go visit it is during your high school. You're like, what made you want to go then?
It was some combination of the financial aid that they gave,
Yeah.
right? And it just, it seemed like the best option that I
Yeah.
had at the time. And like I said, it could not have worked out better for me.
Yeah.
A women's college, for me, it's not for everyone, that's for sure. But really helped me explore, you know, aspects of, leadership and career and,
Mm,
math, et cetera, that I'm not sure that I would have gotten at
mm,
a different university, especially a large one.
mm.
And like I said, this um, Econ 101, uh, they teach it a little bit differently at Wellesley, at least they have historically, which is, there's no widgets. Nobody's talking about, the trade-off between, nuts and bolts or anything like
Yeah.
that. Everything is motivated by public policy examples. When you learn about, your first statistics and econometrics uh, classes, you're not excited that, oh, OLS is blue, right? No,
Right.
it's that OLS allows us to, summarize data and make predictions and
Yeah.
things like that. And so
That's how they were teaching it.
even back in the day, and uh, it was the 90s, right?
Mm,
And I had some great mentors. Like I said, Chip Case was a great reason that I'm an economist.
mm.
And I don't know if you know this, so at the time of his death, so I don't know if it's still true now, but as of 15 or so years ago, or 10 maybe, if you line up all the female economists by where they went to undergraduate, the mode is Wellesley College.
Wow.
And so during Chip's career there, I think we counted 70 PhD economists that came out of
Really?
Wellesley. Yeah. So
I
people like
knew that it
Betsy
was just such
Stevenson,
a
Kristen Butcher, Nicole Mastis, um, lots of people, and
right.
um, Kristen Butcher has a really nice paper on, basically, is it selection or is it treatment? And, it's hard to disentangle those two things, and, even in the best of cases. But I think they make a pretty persuasive case that a lot of it's treatment.
Well, why? What was happening for you as a econ major that would have caused you to want to become an economist?
So I think a lot of it was this, sort of how the classroom is structured, that, we're using examples that are really resonant with
Mm,
people and their lives. And, you know, the smartest kid in class is always a woman. Also, the dumbest kid in
mm,
class is always a woman. But there was something, very special about that for
mm.
me that I think changed my trajectory.
Oh, that's interesting. If you've got these barriers, I guess you're saying you can see yourself in the best in the class.
Exactly.
Oh,
I think still today, Northwestern's undergraduate economics major is something like 30% women.
wow.
And it was 100% at Wellesley, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's just, it's hard to know how that would, how those peer effects would have
Yeah,
changed one. Like we just don't know the counterfactual, but
right.
I'm really grateful
Mm,
for the experience there.
hmm. Wow. So how do you find Econ 101? Is it just required?
It was not, but Chip Case was such a personality on campus. He was, a big sports fan, and just, he was in all the admissions videos, and just like a big, big personality. And so people would say, talk in the dining hall, everybody should take a class with Chip Case before they graduate. And I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to major in, so I may as well take it, as a first semester sophomore. And I'm
Mm,
glad I did, because it just changed everything. Everything came
sophomore.
together.
But
Yes.
you double major in religion. So is that like your when you arrive, you're like, I'm gonna do religion, and you added
Yeah.
econ on?
Yeah, probably. I took a writing class that was in the religion department. Everybody had to take a writing class, and I
Yeah.
also fell in love with that and various aspects of that.
Hmm.
And it was a fun double major. There's a couple of double majors in religion and economics out there. Jens Ludwig was also one. I can't remember. There was
So he
another,
was
not at
wait,
Wellesley, of course, but
Ludwig did an econ religion major?
double major. Yep, exactly.
Oh,
So
huh,
there's a couple of us out there, and
wow.
it goes surprisingly well together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So it's funny because you've got this background where you said your family are mathematical naturals and enjoy it. And also you've got this social consciousness or public civic mindedness. And so is Wellesley like building on both of those kind of? So somebody with those sentiments would have liked Wellesley even econ even more?
I think so. I think
Huh.
so.
Is
Um,
that just Case or there's other professors?
oh no, it's not just Case, and of course, if you sort of look at the history of the department, Carolyn Shaw Bell. Was there for a long time.
Oh,
They named the Big C-SWEP Award after
yeah.
her. Um, and even Catherine Coleman, who was, I think, the something like the first woman to publish in the American Economic Review. So I should review my
Wow.
history, but like it's got this long storied history of impacting economics. And
Oh.
sort of as it's a really excellent department. People are really into research. I just did the external review on it about a year and a half ago. And the undergrad student said, oh, whenever you're talking to a faculty member, if you're trying to make conversation, just say, oh, what's your research about these days? And I thought, yes, yes.
Ah,
And so, the students, talk about research. They talk about research design.
yeah.
Of course, we'll get into Princeton before too long, but it's no accident that there are a lot of Princeton trained economists there.
Mm,
And of course, I should say, if I'll follow your lead, but after Wellesley, I had the great opportunity to go work at the Council of Economic Advisors under Alicia Minnell, who was a Wellesley graduate, who was one of the members then.
mm,
But I was also there with Phil Levine, who was a Wellesley professor and has been a great mentor to me over the years. I truly would not be an economist today if it weren't for Phil.
Really?
And we were there when Clinton signed the Welfare Reform Act.
Yeah,
And
Phil would
so,
have been like an assistant professor, right? You'd have just gotten there.
yeah,
Because
that's
doesn't he
right.
graduate like 90 or something?
Hmm.
Oh, and
So
so
he
you
was
got there,
young.
like you got there in 89, 90? No, you graduate in 95.
That's right. That's right.
So you were like 92 or something.
Yeah. Something like, yeah,
Oh,
91, 92. That's right.
okay. Oh, wow. So what do you want to be when you grow up, when you're graduating?
Yeah. So I got this great opportunity to work at the Council of Economic
Oh, that's
Advisors.
what it was. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And like many people, I was deciding between do I want to get a PhD in economics or do I want to go to law school? And so
Yeah.
I was in this perfect location to see, there were a lot of lawyers walking around that White House and a lot of economists. And so I would
Oh,
just, sort of sit in the back in meetings and watch, like, do I want to be that one or do I want to be that one? And um, just over time, I learned that, I'm glad that the world has lawyers, but I want to be one of the economists because I love the way their minds think. I love that they've got a framework to think about any policy question that kind of comes at them. And then, of course, we've got these tools that we can do
mm.
measurement, we can try to tease out cause and effect, et cetera.
the math, the
Hmm.
math part of you is like the math part of you, the hairs raising on your arm a little bit when when the economist is talking about data and measurement and lawyers are talking in a different way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm. But you're in that world of policy. So are you thinking to yourself when you decide that you want to do a PhD in economics, are you thinking, I want to be a professor? Or are your aspirations somehow in the area of making policy itself?
You know, it's even hard to remember. I think, a good part of me wanted to be like Phil or like Chip Case and go and be a professor at a liberal arts college and, impact other people's lives like they impacted
Mm,
mine.
yeah.
But I also saw these folks who, spent their careers in Washington, D.C., really doubling down on, certain policies, et cetera. And they had great careers also.
Yeah.
Um, Although I will tell you, I didn't think I was going to, be a professor at a big research university, which of course is what I've ended up doing. So,
Mm.
fortunately, we've got so many options when it comes to, we build these skills and there's a lot of parts of society that, value them.
Well, so it's interesting to hear you talk because probably of most people that I've interviewed, I'm thinking to myself, Diane had this like transformative experience at Wellesley. She then goes to the CEA, and then at the CEA, she's interacting with professional economists before graduate school. She's probably got a pretty good handle of what an economist is. But do you think, looking back, that you had a good handle on what an economist was as opposed to economics?
I mean, I think I did understand
Hmm.
at least what, an empirical, labor public type person does.
Yeah,
I think I didn't really understand, the great diversity and sort of what, theorists do and
right.
the wide range. And I'm
Mm.
glad, that I got that experience, in graduate school and, sort of learning, you know, from people with, with different specializations. But I sort of knew what this path would look like, and I wasn't ever really tempted to leave the
Okay.
path of like policy-minded empirical labor
Is
public.
Alan Krueger in the Clinton administration while you're at the CEA?
Yes, he was,
Huh.
and he was going back to Princeton. It was
Oh,
the time where we weren't sure was David Card going to stay or go back to Berkeley. And my great mentor Phil Levine was pushing Princeton pretty hard.
okay. So
And
you
so,
did know it was like amazing,
absolutely,
not
absolutely.
just because it's Princeton, but you knew even for labor econ, it was special.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Oh,
I think about these times at the CEA. So Phil Levine and I were tasked with trying to evaluate the impacts of welfare reform.
okay. I
Um,
missed something. Phil's at the CEA with you. He's not been left at. Did you say that Phil took you went with Phil to the CEA?
I did not go with Phil, but I had the happy coincidence that we were there at the same
Oh,
time,
I
and
see.
so that's really where I got to know Phil, and he was so generous, and I just learned so much. Like so much, of course, what we do is the guild aspect of it, and so I
Yeah.
learned so much sitting next to him, watching him code on Stata. I remember
Yeah.
him running down to my office when we were starting to work on this welfare reform project, and he said, I've solved the tables." And I was like, wait, how have you created tables? We don't even have the data set yet. And what he came in with was a shell, right? So he's like, oh, but this is how we're going to lay out the tables.
Yeah.
And that's all of the hard work. And so
Yeah.
now it's just filling in the numbers. And I thought,
What do you think when he said that?
huh. No, I thought he was nuts.
Yeah.
Well, he is nuts, but for different reasons. But um, and that was maybe my first exposure to what people refer to as table theory, right?
Yeah.
Which is a big part of I think the Princeton training. And
Oh,
it's true that still to this day I start by thinking out, okay, how will you lay out the argument in the
yeah.
tables? What do you need to show,
Yeah.
et cetera. And
Yeah.
even just last week, I'm breaking in a new set of co-authors, and one of them had different opinions about how to structure the table. I was like, we can fight, but Princeton people have really strong opinions about this, and it'll just be easier if you defer to me now.
Defer to me now.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a Princeton thing.
it is. Well, I mean, I'm sure it's more than
I'm
that,
sure
but
it's everywhere. Yeah, but I didn't realize. Actually, I mean, I have a colleague, Rebecca Thornton, and I think probably until I met Rebecca, I had not met someone, I hadn't met a table theorist until I met Rebecca. And so I didn't really put two and two together that this is this is a common thing. I've
this
learned a
is a
lot from
thing.
her.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a
Have you
thing.
converted?
Well, I do whatever Rebecca does. I just ask her how to do it, and then whatever she says, I do it. No, I mean, it's what do you think that skill is? Why are you good at it?
Oh, I because I learned it, like sitting next to Phil, and then of course, fast forward getting to the IR section at Princeton, where so much of what we learned was sitting around the coffee maker or standing at that counter. And, that's how everybody thinks. We don't, when we present works in progress, it's just the tables because,
Right.
we want to pour over the numbers together. And so just, time after time, we're, um, you know, that's what we look at. That's how we think about the world.
I think a lot of listeners would be really intrigued. So, like, if you could give like the elevator pitch of like of what your table theory is, like, what is the point of a table to you? What makes a table a fantastic table, and what is a failed table?
Yeah, well, fantastic table is you can tell what's going on. You can see, what's the source of identifying variation. You can see as you move across the columns, how stable is that? What happens if you change the sample or add other covariates or things like that, like how do things move?
You think that's part of the credibility tradition that Princeton
Absolutely, absolutely,
really?
yes.
Because you're trying to figure out things like, is this a believable result? And you're taking time to communicate it well.
That's right. That's right. I listened to a bunch. Well, I listened to your podcast, but I sort of reviewed a bunch of them, and people talk about, Orley's advice that your hands need to be above the table,
Yeah.
like the literal table, not the table of that, so that you can see, I'm not hiding anything here. I'm not pulling any shenanigans.
Oh my
I'm going to
God.
show you what this is, and I think so much of that is in the tables and the figures and letting the data,
Was there any doubt
speak.
then that you weren't going to go to Princeton? Were you
No,
thinking you
no.
always were like, that's where I'm going?
And in fact, I went, I don't know if you're aware of this, Princeton is in central New Jersey. And so it's a big commitment to spend, your
Yeah.
late 20s in central New Jersey. So I went, for a visit to come to terms with that. I remember going out to lunch with several grad students, including the great Michael Greenstone. And he said, "Oh, you're a Phil Levine student. You're coming here. You're just here to come to terms with it." I was like, "Yeah," Uh, and
Oh,
I'm so
wow.
glad that I did. I mean, it just,
Wow.
yeah,
Well, how
it
big was
was.
the first, big was your cohort when you got there?
There were 18 of us.
Oh,
We're still on a WhatsApp chat, so
oh, that's
uh,
cool.
it is
So what is
cool.
this? Is this like 94?
I entered '97.
Oh, 97. Oh, I misread the thing. What did I? Oh, you leave Wellesley at 95 and then you get the master's in 99. I see.
That's right.
So you
That's
so
right.
you
And
start
so
in
then I was at the White
97.
House in '96 when he signed
Oh,
that
okay.
welfare
Got it.
reform.
Got it. So you get there 97. Well, so you're like math skilled up. So is the first year courses
Oh,
like
nobody's math skilled up
terrible?
enough. I was a minor in math. I had taken real analysis, but half of my class came in with master's degrees from Europe, and so
Mm.
of course, I struggled with the math, like so many people do. So yeah, that first year, of course, was tough, and um, but the section was always there,
Oh,
and
so you're immediately like, all I know about, I mean, I know a lot about the section. I cannot for the life of me, though, remember anytime someone tells me the actual institutional structure. I know it's in the library. I know it's a big part of the importance of Princeton and labor with all these storied people, but what exactly does it mean? Like in the first year, are you like in the section, like you're already sorted in some way, or what exactly goes on?
So Alan Krueger offered me to come over the summer to be a research assistant for him.
Got it.
And so that was great for me to leave Washington, D.C., sort of get acclimated.
And
Um,
real quick, did he do that because y'all had spoken in DC?
exactly,
So he
exactly.
kind
I
of
mean, I'm
knew I
sure
got this
Phil
new
worked it out for
student.
me,
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Right.
exactly, exactly.
Okay. So that
And
summer,
so
you're his RA.
I start work on Project Star, right?
Oh,
I
really?
know, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 99 is the Kruger
Yep.
99 is star. And you are going to get your master's in 99. So you're all over
Right.
this. So you're the
Yeah,
RA
I'm
on
thanked
star
on the
paper?
QJE paper as a research
No
assistant.
way.
He had started it beforehand. I sort of came in near the end there.
I knew
But
you had
yeah,
a star paper, but I didn't really put it together that you're like in the origin stories.
yeah, or at least the Kruger style origin stories,
Yeah, the
right? Of
Kruger
course,
Kruger
that was
style.
an experiment that other people did, and
Yeah,
Alan brought it to economics. But
right. What'd you
the
think
real
doing
origin
that?
story is something.
What'd you think
Oh,
is in the summer?
oh, I thought people were nuts. I thought, what have I gotten myself into, right? But
Really?
it was a great group of folks. The section at the time had David Lee, it had Gordon Dahl, Lisa Barrow, Helen Levy, Michael Greenstone, and so what a great group of
Was Ken
sort of.
Che there?
He had already left,
He
although
leaves. That's right. He was a
because he's a
student.
little older. Yeah,
Yeah, he's a
yeah.
little bit older. He doesn't teach there. He leaves there. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, like he graduated from there
He
and
graduates
had
from there, but he's not one of your professors.
no,
Okay.
no, that's
Got
right.
it.
That's
Got it.
or nor one of the sort of older cohort. And I remember David Lee explaining to me how the CPS outgoing rotation group structure worked,
Mm.
and there's just so much to learn from sitting in those computer labs with the folks who'd been around.
So you're
So
mastering these data sets.
yeah,
Like you are getting like unusual depth probably about these big data sets. It's not like you're just going to
it was
iTunes and just
honestly, I would
downloading.
maybe describe it more as breadth.
Mm,
because the time at the CEA, you would have to, pull down data from this or that. And so there were a lot of data sets that I had heard of and like
mm,
done a little bit of work with, like the National Post-Secondary,
yeah.
whatever, NPSAS, or the
Hmm.
employment cost of employee compensation survey, just like a lot of things like that. The consumer or survey of consumer finances. And so I think, what was great about my path in was this diversity, not so much the depth, but the breadth.
Yeah. But it's not like you're just downloading from iPum some data set. Like you're
Not
just
back in
like,
the day. That's right.
you're like hard, it's like you're really getting into it. That's great. So is there any question in your mind that that labor's gonna be a field?
None, none.
Is it also,
Right.
is it public also? Is it just labor?
You know, um, I did not do public as a field. Um, those two are really conflated at Princeton.
Mm.
Um,
Oh,
and of course, Alan, I would say, was a labor public person. I think we all were labor public people.
yeah.
Um, uh, they have had at the time and still have a really great development group, and so actually one of my fields was development. And
Mm.
talk about people who take the data seriously and identification
Right.
seriously. I
Is
learned
Deaton one of it? Did you take a class with Deaton?
Deaton, Case, Paxson,
Oh,
Chiang Kai-shek. Um, it was like that was such a great compliment.
oh, it just seems like what an education.
Yeah, it was. It
Well,
was.
so are you getting, you think, I know it's like, it's kind of like when you're a fish in water, you don't really know what water is. Like, so like,
Yeah.
I know you don't really know, like, oh, I'm like getting the foundations of causal inference of empirical labor. You probably just think I'm becoming an economist. But do you, looking back, sort of, is it now a little bit more obvious that there's like something is different as it relates to this causal inference credibility type of thing? Like what would it have been?
Yeah, and of course, the coin of the realm there was all about identification. Um, Helen Levy used to joke that we should all get T-shirts made and wear them to the seminar that says, "What is the underlying source of your causal variation or of your identifying variation?" Which would make a very large T-shirt, but it kind of was the same question over and over and over. What's the source of the variation that gives you identification? Um, but on the other hand, when Orley taught us program evaluation, I didn't know that thing was called the Ashenfelter's dip, because he just taught it as that. And it wasn't until later that I was like, oh, because he kind of like invented this,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Um, it was just the only way to do economics.
Hmm.
And it wasn't that very forefront of the causal revolution, but it
Yeah, right.
was just a little bit after, where kind of the cake was mostly baked. And
Yeah,
now
yeah,
we were
yeah.
just, learning how to, apply it in the different ways.
Well, so how quickly is it that you sort of match with Dr. Krueger as your advisor? Is that like, and then what
From,
is that process?
from the start,
Because you're his
right? So
RA,
exactly,
you just sort of are
exactly.
like, this is going to work.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Huh.
right. And there's always the section. It's sort of like a committee. It's sort of everybody gives you advice. David
Oh,
Card was visited the one year. So he was always very generous with advice. Cece was an official member of my committee, but Orly would come in, and if you were just around while he was thinking and saying things out loud, there was so much to glean there.
yeah.
Um, Jeff Kling and Marianne Bertrand were junior folks there at the time, and
Oh,
talk about great, brilliant, and generous, human beings. Absolutely fantastic. I laugh that Hank Farber was not like any, he was never officially a mentor. I talked to him probably more than anyone else back there.
mm,
Still, just there was this, like, everyone was there all the time, and the ideas were just floating around the air. And so
that kind of.
while
So, did the advisor advisee relationship? It's like the first, it's like kind of like the Pope being the first among equals. Is it more like that kind of thing? Like it's taking a
Probably.
village to raise this
It definitely took
student?
a village to raise me. That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
As opposed to me and this advisor are like, we're in this, it's just us.
exactly. Exactly. And I see, here at Northwestern, where we don't have the same geography, where everybody's, together and there's this common coffee pot and we're just all talking. It's much more, one-on-one. I'm going to meet with you. I'm going to
Mm.
go meet with this other person.
Well, so what's your job market paper? How did you find this dissertation? Is it STAR?
Uh,
Is it your STAR paper?
it's not Star.
Oh,
So um, one day, Alan called me into his office and said, "You know what? Uh, Food stamps at the time is a really important program, and there's not that many people working on it. You should go think about food stamps." And I did, and it's been such this important part of my career. I love the
yeah.
food stamp program now. I used to have to pinch myself to keep myself awake as I was reading about food stamps because I thought it was boring at first, but I don't think that anymore. So my job market paper took um, uh, an apt associates experiment that they ran cashing out food stamps in a couple of different places. And I
Cashing
did,
out. What does that mean? Cashing out.
replacing the voucher benefits with an equivalent amount of cash, right? So a
But you
big
have to
question,
use the cash for food or no?
well, that's awfully hard to monitor, right? Because if
Oh,
you give
so it
up
was
cash,
literally they replaced the voucher with a cash
that's right.
transfer.
That's right. And of course,
It's
this
an
is a big
RCT?
question. It was an RCT.
Oh,
And what they did in the RCT was, an intention to treat, compare people who got
yeah.
cash with people who didn't. What I did was try to break folks up into the inframarginal group and the marginal group
Mm,
to see, only some of those folks do we expect them to behave as if cash is
yeah.
the same as food stamps. And so when I separated them out, it sure, it looked like, yeah, um,
You got like a food diary with these people?
exactly. Also spending data.
Spending on non-food, but it's like itemized type of stuff. How big is the sample?
Exactly. Um,
You
I
don't have
want
to
to
be
say
the exact number, but it's like,
like 3,000 is what I'm thinking.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was a serious, gosh, these evaluation shops do some really great
Yeah.
studies, and a lot of times they can't, explore them all, because they're, providing, a product to a client, but then
Right.
they'll give you the data, and you can do,
That's
some
how
of
it
the extra
worked. They
things.
ran this deal and you were like, I'll do it.
Or well, they did the official report, which compares treatment to control,
Yeah.
but they didn't break out, and ask this, more economicsy question.
Yeah.
And so they gave the data to me. Um,
Do you have
uh,
any non-food insecurity food spending outcomes? Like
oh yeah.
grades? Oh, so what do you, who
Oh,
is the group?
not like grades, right? So
Okay.
that kind of, was before its time. But you could see, did people buy more cigarettes and alcohol
Yeah,
and
right.
things like
Okay.
that?
So
Yeah.
what do you find?
Um, I find that the people for whom you would predict no change in their behavior, we observe no change in their behavior. And for those folks who were constrained by the food stamp vouchers, right? They wanted to spend less on food than their food stamp vouchers were worth. They spent less on food when they were given cash instead
So
of,
what do they do? So it's like an income transfer.
yeah, yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah.
So what are they
Um,
buying? What do they buy with that extra money?
the stuff that they buy with their regular money too, right? Uh, so, a little bit more transportation, a little bit more clothing, sort of um, pretty much like what the permanent income hypothesis would suggest.
Well, so how do you think so were you surprised when did you
No,
learn a lot? Did you sort of feel like, my mind was changed as a result of my study?
um, that's a hard that's a hard question.
Yeah.
Um, I think um, it is hard to go out with a paper that people are saying, well, yeah, this is what I thought anyway, but it's nice, that you were able to measure it.
Yeah.
And but that is the paper, that I wrote, and I think it's pretty good evidence.
Yeah, totally.
It's yeah, it's not the only evidence.
But then does it lead, okay, unless I'm misunderstanding you, would that therefore lead you to draw a conclusion like it's not that it might not be that bad to use a cash transfer program in place of a food voucher program? Does it lead
And
you
the
that far?
opposite is true. The opposite is true too, that we're concerned as economists that there's a bunch of dead weight loss if we
Yeah.
give people vouchers. And the
Yeah.
truth is there's not that much dead weight
It
loss.
wasn't that much.
Yeah.
Mm, might
Yeah.
be
And then,
might be
and then if we're thinking
politically
about
easier to do the
there's
voucher.
the there's the politics, and then there's also if you share these preferences, um, you know, some people we want to, especially when there's kids in the house, protect and make sure that there's enough money that's set aside for food. And so if that comes with a little bit of dead weight loss,
Yeah.
so be it, because there's other benefits to that as well.
Okay. So you write that and you do really well on the market. So you graduate. Okay. You don't tell me because I want to look.
Oh,
So
two?
you
No,
grad
it's okay.
'02. Okay. So you graduate in '02. What's the job market like in '02? It's a couple of years after the recession or a year later, I guess, or right?
Yeah, I
9/11
think it was a
and the
little bit
dot
soft, but it
com.
wasn't a lot soft. Yeah.
Okay. So you're on the market and you end up doing well. Was it fun being on the market?
That's not my recollection. It was fun meeting the people, right?
Mm,
Going on the visits to different campuses, getting to know folks, having people who, you've read their papers and admire their work so much, suddenly know your name. Like, how cool is that?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's one of those things that when it's over and it's resolved well, you're like, oh yeah, that was fun. But
That was fun.
no, it is not fun. Are you kidding?
Right. Where was the ASSA that year? Was it cold?
No, it was in Atlanta.
Okay.
Um, and I remember that somebody, another job market candidate, because that was back in the day when you were like running from,
Yeah.
hotel to hotel.
Yeah.
Um, he was running to some hotel, and um, I think he got mugged. Somebody punched him in the face,
Oh
and
gosh.
not a Princeton guy, but just somebody that was on the market that year. And so he had this like shiner.
Terrible.
But we economists can be a little bit awkward. So I feel like you or I would have started every like interview from then on, like some guy punched me on my way to this thing,
Yeah,
but
right.
he was too embarrassed to talk about it. So he just like had this giant black eye and like
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Okay. So do you take the Robert Wood Johnson postdoc and the Harris thing? Like you're like, I'm gonna defer and I'm gonna do the postdoc?
that's exactly right. And they
Mm,
said, we'll give you a year and a half to do
mm,
that postdoc, and you need to come back, um, that final semester. And Robert Johnson Foundation agreed to that. And so then I took,
mm.
a year and a half out of Berkeley, which of course is a phenomenal
Yeah.
place to be. And the only sort of downside I would say is I had an office mate who was a political scientist who was an assistant professor and had kids. And
Yeah.
so he knew what a gift it was to have this extra time, and he made absolute most of it. But since I was coming from grad school, I didn't know how hard it was going to be on the other side. And so, sort of
Mm.
looking back on it, I think, oh, you should, if I would have known how hard being an assistant professor was, I think I would have like just spent a few more hours. You know,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Were there, it's funny because it's a health gig and you are doing food insecurity, food, that's natural, but did it feel natural when you were there? We were like, I'm in the right place.
It felt like a bit of a shift. While I was there, that's when I started my work. It came out in JHR. I think it was my first hit, or first hit
Mm,
by myself, on school meals and
yeah.
childhood obesity. And that did feel like a shift. And it's funny how over time, I think we do think, much more holistically about
Yeah.
this.
Mm,
A couple of years later, Phil Levine and I wrote this paper on Medicaid expansions and
mm.
test score outcomes. And people didn't really know what to do with it. It's sort of published in a bit of an out of the way place because it wasn't education, it wasn't health, it was this combination. And it was I would just say it was ahead of its time. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
so glad that today we've got a broader view of there's just like the doors between these things are porous because it's all human capital.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that's some real progress that we've seen.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so there's a several jobs that you end up having, and I was kind of I don't want to skip over Harris because that you were there for 6 years, but I also don't want to skip over your time at the Hamilton Project. So I just want to say you end up at Chicago from '04 to 2010. And I'm curious, looking back, what would you say the value added of that experience was for the kind of person that you've become now as an economist? Because it's like, it's such an important university, economists, just the legacy of it. I'm curious how you feel like it changed you.
Absolutely. A couple of real highlights of that. Chicago loves theory in a way that Princeton does not love theory.
Mm,
And that was good to be exposed to. I will also say that, that was when Heckman was, first really getting into, early life. And of course,
yeah.
he is a force of nature. And, the amount of thought that was going into, aspects of childhood as an important time for human
Oh,
capital
yeah. Right.
development was really cool to
Yeah.
sort of be in the ether as that was happening. Um,
Mm,
you know, it's where I started working with Derek Neal. We've got a nice
yeah.
paper on school accountability from those times. But maybe the highlight is that I got to be in the office next to the great Bob Lalonde
Oh,
the
yeah.
whole time I was there. And uh, probably most of your listeners know, Lalonde 86 was this,
Yeah.
sort of big innovation in program evaluation. And he was such an unassuming guy, just, salt to the earth, really messy office, um, but was always good for giving advice, especially big picture advice. So, especially as he was getting sick, I um, started teaching the program evaluation course, which was his baby. And, he gave a bunch of notes about how to do it, including uh, don't do a program evaluation unless it's going to impact somebody's decision making, right? Like we shouldn't just
Oh,
do this to gather, dust on a shelf, but doing a program evaluation correctly is expensive, and you need to decide first and foremost, do we even need an evaluation here?
do you
And
feel like you agree with that now?
oh yeah,
You
100%.
didn't necessarily, that hadn't really crossed your mind though before you had to actually teach the class?
Exactly. In
Mm,
so many other, aspects of just like the wisdom that he
mm,
had from, from doing the work that he did. Another piece that has always stuck with me is um, he says sometimes when we teach program evaluation, especially to MPP candidates, we try to make it too hard when in fact, you know, clarity of thought is
yeah.
the goal here. And so
Table
I've
theory.
gotten better, exactly,
It
table
does
theory.
kind of
I've
feel like
gotten
it's
better over
correlated with it.
time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
With making sure that people understand,
Yeah.
what is this? What are we identifying? What can we
Mm.
say? What can we not say? And that's a lesson that,
You think that's
you
a
know,
Princeton thing?
it's certainly a Bob Lalonde thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's definitely, it's interesting. Table theory, now that you say that. Orley said in his interview, he said he came up with the phrase diff and diff so he didn't have to say regression. So it was like to policymakers. And so it's interesting at Princeton, this emphasis is not just on credibility, but like talking to normal people and doing it effectively. And if you're talking this way about teaching program evaluation at Harris to MPP students, that's like the return on that skill seems really high.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, that's
Um,
cool.
clarity of thought is sometimes helped by math, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's hindered by math. And you've got to
Yeah.
figure out, when does more math help, and when does, when do more words help?
I've taken a lot of time, but I do want to get into. So I don't think a lot of people, well, maybe they do, but let's assume that people don't know a lot about the Hamilton Project because you become the director of the Hamilton Project for 2 years. So at first I was just curious, what is the Hamilton Project? If you have to explain it to a bunch of economists, young people, and anyone. And then how did you get that gig? First, just kind of to hear about that.
Yeah. So the Hamilton Project is an organization at the Brookings Institution that was founded with the insight that there are really good ideas being incubated in the academy, and academic economists are uniquely badly situated with getting those into the echo chamber that's Washington, D.C. And so
Mhm.
we would go around to subject matter experts and say, all right, you've been studying, school choice or, whatever for 20 years, tell us what to do. And then we would put them through a process where, making their policy proposals actionable and understandable. And both of
Mhm.
those are hard for economists to do, right? The old
Mhm.
joke, like assume a can opener, right? Like you can't assume a can opener. You've got to like say, and this is the lever that I would pull, and then I would pull this other lever. And it was a steep learning curve, but my gosh, it was fun to look around, what was happening in the academy and say, all right, like we need these types of people thinking about, environmental policy, and these let's think about, changing safety net policy, and things like that. And so I got to, tap some of the best people to think about really important topics, and then um, pitch them to Washington.
Did you know beforehand I might be good at being a CEO of an organization? That's what you were, right?
I mean,
Director of the Hamilton
I
Project, right?
suppose. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Did you know you
No, it
had
was
that
my first
ability?
real experience with management, and um, I loved it. Right? Being a manager isn't that different from supervising PhD students. It's also not that different from being a parent. um,
Mm,
and um, you know, for an economist, I like people, and um, it was great. It was great to work with a team, and I feel like in my post Hamilton time, I've done a lot more work with teams
mm.
because that's how we get just a lot of things done.
Well,
And
so what was the draw for Northwestern to take you out of that kind of thing? Because you end up going to Northwestern
so I was
and
at
their
Northwestern first,
Oh, you
and then
were.
I negotiated for a 2-year leave of absence for me
Oh,
to
I see.
do the Hamilton project.
You
And
were
so I
curious. You were just curious if what this is that what it was? You were sort of
Yeah,
curious what it would
exactly.
if you were what this would be like?
Exactly. And I'll say that, I went to my dean and asked if I could get the 2-year leave of absence. She's like, oh, no, like, we need you to teach statistics to the PhD students. But we had Morty Shapiro here as the president at the time. And I also pitched it to him because he was, a labor economist. He was really into this. He's like, absolutely, you should go, and you
Mm,
need to come back at the end. And that was really good insight on his part. Like, yeah, we found somebody to cover the stats class, but for me, it changed how I thought about evidence and policy and how
mm,
to bring those two together. It changed how I taught in the classroom. And it was a real, just sort of inflection point in my career.
mm.
And I'm glad that they let me do it.
Well, I want to end on this real quick. I have two things. This is something I wanted to ask you. You have this like massive vita. You're just like been so productive and so much work. And so I was curious, what do you feel like is your most what is your most underrated paper that you feel like is actually not as well known and you really like it?
That's a great question. And I'm sort of running through um, to think about that. Underrated. Sorry for all this dead air time. Like my
Oh, no.
my wheels are spinning. Um, I think that I'm really proud of the series of papers that we did on the food stamp rollout, the original rollout.
Mhm.
And, I wouldn't say that those are necessarily underrated or, underappreciated. I love the AER piece, which thinks about the long-term impacts of having food stamp benefits when you're a kid. But I think
Mhm.
those as a package where we also looked at consumption, where we looked at employment responses, we looked at birth weight. I
Yeah.
really think that those as a package, I'm just really proud of that work.
Mm.
And where I think a lot of people saw the long-term effect paper
Yeah.
and maybe haven't seen the other ones. But I
Yeah.
think each one of them, helped chip away, in providing knowledge.
How many papers came out of that project?
I would say the four,
Yeah.
long-term effects, consumption, labor supply, and birth weights.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's funny. You're a research agenda economist. You're like there's this theologian and he's like got a book called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. That's why I sort of think about, you're like doing so much on these large programs aimed at poverty, a lot on food insecurity, but not just that, just pushing and pushing and pushing. And it's interesting, it's kind of funny. And maybe I would have said this anyway, but it's like that kind of also reminds me of what it takes to be a good musician. It's like a lot of consistently showing up, practicing and like these returns coming from experience. It's cool.
I'll say one of the things that I'm most interested in right now and really proud of is they put me on the board of our food bank here in Chicago.
Oh,
And I have helped them think about, how to, make sure that we've got food banks in areas where they're needed. And I've helped them think through, how do we diversify our offerings and make sure that people are availing themselves of the safety net, et cetera. And I think that the reason that I've been able to serve in this way is partially what you were talking about. Like I have studied this food stamp program, for a long time. I understand details that would bore you to tears, but are
yeah.
super important. And that sometimes puts you in the path of being able to, team up with other folks and make a real difference.
Yeah.
And, I feel like um, we as economists need to remember that we're not just writing our papers for publications, but we do have a social mission, and
Yeah.
we have these great tools and can use them, for helping other people who are doing direct service, or policymakers, et
Yeah.
cetera.
Yeah, I know. You though went even deeper though because you really have built up so much human capital, not just in the production, not just like the scientific record and being like, here's a bunch of papers on it. You have like this rich diversity all around it that would allow you to sort of, and you must have a talent. I mean, you were director of the Hamilton Project. And so you have this natural talent of leadership, it seems like, to be, and that's kind of the CEO. Like even you saying that you're on the board, I mean, nobody would ask Scott Cunningham to be on the board of anything unless they're wanting to burn that thing down. So like, but that kind of high level view and being able to get into the weeds is really a scarce skill that you seem to have.
Boy, and I think I learned it from some great folks.
Yeah.
Phil, of course, Hillary Hoynes, who I hope you're going to have on soon,
Hmm.
Alan, CC, like all these folks, are just masters at that. And it's I've been so fortunate to be able to watch them in action, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
try to imitate it as best I can.
Yeah. Well, what are you looking forward to these days? Looking forward now that you're, maybe just out of curiosity, what are you excited about that you're working on or the future?
Well, Scott, thanks for asking. I did not set you up for this, but I'm on my first ever real sabbatical right now.
Oh,
Highly recommend. And I am writing a book
oh,
about how to end hunger in the United States. And
really?
I think we can do it. There's not just one policy to do it, but it's going to take sort of a mixed strategy, and it's going to take public-private partnerships, and it's going to take policy. It's going to take neighbors helping neighbors. But I am most excited about this book. And, I think that we have a lot of knowledge, from the various scholars that have been working in this. And it's time to sort of dress that up and, send it out into the world so that people can understand it.
Have you already started the book?
I have started the book. I'm not as far
Oh,
along as my editor would like me to be, but I am started it, and I've really taken inspiration from people like Melissa Carney, whose book came out a couple of years ago, and then Jesse Rothstein's writing one right now, and
oh.
I've learned a lot from them, and I'm grateful
Well,
for
when do you
their.
think that'll be out? What are you hoping?
I am hoping that my part will be done by the end of the sabbatical this summer, and but then
Oh,
it takes a long
yeah,
time because peer review and then edits, etc. So
maybe
probably
26,
2 years, something like that. But
27. Okay.
yeah,
Oh, I can't
but
wait.
you'll be the first to know. I'll send you a copy, and I'm excited about it because I
Is it
think
with
that
Princeton? Is it with Princeton Press?
it's not, and I have not technically signed
Okay.
a contract, so I probably shouldn't say,
Okay. Yeah. Don't say. All right.
but uh, I hope we see more and more economists like doing a lap around the research that we've done, and really sort of getting that
Yeah.
into the hands of people who can use it to inform better decisions.
Yeah. That's it's so logical. The more I think about it, of how you've been connecting research to policymakers in so many different ways, you know, and this could be another way of just trying, it just seems like you've been trying to tear down these firewalls there's always these firewalls between disciplines and decision makers. And it seems like it only gets worse over time. And you've been consistently building these bridges.
I've sure been trying. That's
Yeah.
right. And yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I can't wait to see the book. And it's so nice to have you on the podcast. I took you a lot longer than I had budgeted, but I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
God, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
She hated when I called.